Thanks for having me. Nice red carpet here. Japanese flag. I've had a lovely time here. I've had 4 days in Bermuda, and it's really beautiful. My talk's called The Power of the Palimpsest. And probably the most... does anyone know what a palimpsest is? You do, though, don't you? Because I told you last night. Yeah, and you actually helped my talk. I put, some funny bits in because after talking to you. So the first question really is, WTF is a palimpsest? Which is a question I asked my friend Keisha, who's an art writer, when I showed her my work, and she said, "You're making palimpsests of time." I'm like, what the heck is a palimpsest? But I didn't say heck. So I have a quiz. So let's define the word first. So a palimpsest is a lemon-scented kitchen cleaner. I mean, I'd love to be able to talk about that, but you probably would leave. Small poisonous insect, that'll be interesting. Or see a multi-layered record. Yeah, see? See that? This is an example of some of the palimpsests, one palimpsest actually. The one on the left is the detail from it. And it's made from 4 or 5 different posters that I've ripped down from the streets of New York, where I live, taken to the studio and pasted together, put a thin spray of silver over the top, and then started working into it with black ink. And that's it's about 2/3 that size, so it's pretty huge. I was going a bit of a midlife crisis, which I call my midlife zombie apocalypse, but I couldn't fit zombie on there. So I had to drop it, but it gives you the point. I was going through a crisis, as we all do, and it was like 4 years ago, and I only had 10 followers on Instagram. And so I needed to find content for my posts, and it's like you have to, the situation is you got to feed. It's like 3 meals a day: breakfast, lunch, and evening dinner. That's when you're supposed to post, accordingly to someone who was teaching me to get me up to the 20 I'm at right now. No, actually, I'm just masking my vulnerability with humor, which is one of the reasons I was probably going through the midlife crisis. So basically, to get myself out of my crisis, I did a Forrest Gump. I would walk extraordinarily long walks across New York, up to the Bronx, back down to Brooklyn, and take thousands of photographs. I wasn't eating chocolates, though. And this is the kind of thing that I was taking pictures of, which just I loved so much, but I'd started taking it for granted. But I started looking, I started opening my eyes and being more receptive to what was around the city. On the surface, maybe it looks like a mess, it looks like vandalism, decay. But I was taking photographs of doorways, this stuff's all over New York, windows, and ripped posters where the rip would look like these bold, aggressive brushstrokes. And the rain would weather the wheat paste that was holding the posters on the wall, and they would start coming away. And you have these accidental juxtapositions of images that weren't even supposed to be together. And I like this one because the story that has been accidentally told, you have the crucifixion on the right, and then this depressed boy in the far left corner. And then you go up, and there's this lady wearing a crucifix, holding a baby. It's a weird juxtaposition that I was very psyched to find. This is one of my favorites. The way I get the most vintage posters possible is down on the subway in New York, and this is a A subway billboard that's been scraped and sanded clean by an MTA employee to make way for a new, ugly film poster. But what he's unconsciously left is this wonderful piece of abstract art, at least to my eyes. And, I've been trying to decide what art is all my life. I don't know. I was actually trying to think before coming on, like, I need to put in a bit like, what is art? But I don't know. I don't know. Can anyone tell me? It's like describing what God is. It's like, your words really are not adequate to express that. But he left this beautiful abstract art, and there's loads of those down in the subway. That's my wonderful son, Alexander, listening to me pontificate. But, on second thought, it's like if he is exposed to me talking about why traditionally something is trash and should be looked as ugliness. I mean, if I'm educating him to see that as something beautiful, then, why not? So, as I said with that billboard, I kept finding these wonderful pieces of abstract art, especially if I zoomed into details and looked really closely. I could find I don't know, I mean, maybe you'd contradict me, but I could see that in a gallery, and it's about 2 inches square. I'll stop talking now and just take you through. I love this juxtaposition that I've done with 2 photographs where you got the human mouth showing with what looks like a kind of toupee falling off at the top right, and then you've got the monkey mouth with bad teeth on the left with a hairy chin. Sometimes people would post letters. I love it. It's beautiful to see people writing letters and pasting them to walls. I don't know who they're talking to, but that's about 1 inch square, maybe. So another thing that I really loved finding, and there's tons of this stuff all over New York, and it's being kind of like cleaned up now, so there's less of it. So it's the spontaneous gestures that humans, well, because monkeys can't write, I guess, that anonymous people would write on the walls or put up stickers, and it was lovely kind of like seeing what people were naturally, innately wanting to express. This one's crazy. I have no idea what that means. Great advice. Another reason I was going through a crisis, I was photographing walls instead of my girlfriend. Quite literally true. Yeah. Compliments. That's tiny. Again, that's like 1 inch square. Provocation. And these lovely, like, short conversations that people would have, like complete strangers. He was offended by teenage wasteland. He's like boring, out of ideas, very judgmental. And then poetry on the wall, some that's nice and light, and some that's very empathic. Well, he's not dead, is he? So he probably isn't. And he's probably a lot more successful than the guy that put that up. I don't know, maybe not. Philosophy, prediction. culinary statements. And that's a little bit of a generalization, isn't it? Because there are probably some people that do eat horses in America. That's lovely. Politics and parody. So that, I'm glad that didn't depress you. So this was pasted up, obviously, before he got into power, and I heard, I might have made it up, I heard that was posted by a Russian. They do have a sense of humor, after all. And these poignant questions that were poised by the very finest minds in New York, like, when I saw it, I was thinking, I'm glad I don't see unicorns anymore, but the response rate's really good, because, like, it is New York, I guess. Okay, so in a historical context, this, as I said earlier, this stuff could be seen as vandalism, ugliness, and decay, but if you look at the history of graffiti, for example, it goes back to ancient Rome, it goes back to ancient Greece. It goes back to cave paintings and caves, animals engraved on the walls in caves. If you look at Pompeii, when Vesuvius erupted, you have all this beautiful graffiti that's still scratched into the walls there, like magic spells and Latin insults, dissing each other in Latin, and peni, apparently, with like shouting, "Hail Titus." I don't even know what that means. One of my favorite games was walking along the road and seeing words that aren't supposed to be in the same posting. But because people had ripped stuff off, and again, it's like this accidental art. I don't know, maybe this isn't art, maybe this is just a game, but I love finding these juxtapositions of stuff that are not supposed to be together. And they make a coherent sentence, well, a short sentence, like a Burroughs-esque cut-up. They never did find those guys. They found the truck. They were selling it at $75. Tyranny. So one of the great things about seeing this art around New York is that pretty much as soon as all the advertising posters are posted up, and you have people walking along, ripping off chunks of poster. I wait until they're all damaged before I do it, so I'm not doing anything wrong. The words like the brand slogans, the company logo, and the text that's selling us things we don't need, it's really, it's made into like these incoherent glyphs and symbols. It no longer makes sense, and what you're left with are these floating heads and limbs of models gesticulating down at pedestrians in the street. I love finding this kind of stuff. For me, what it's saying, and you know, it's the passers-by, anonymous people are having the last say over the tyranny of the advertisers who make us spend money on clothes we don't need and make us feel inadequate and make us go into life crisis. So the original function of the poster, the advertising poster, is absolutely negated. So you're just left with I mean, I love that image. It's a piece of art, and I love that. So this is what I call a green ghost portrait. Another way that the boardings, when the legal postings are put up, the construction companies send a guy out to paint over with this ugly green paint, and what's left are like ghost-like images of the models coming through the paint, and it gives it like a really beautiful kind of dark, mysterious edge. So I quit my job. I wanted to do this 7 days a week, and I was passionate about this. The initial work was purely abstract. I took the chaos from the streets, pasted it together, and made these very abstract compositions. Instead of brushstrokes, the tears in the paper are replacing the brushstroke, and the color from the poster is coming through to make the color. Historically, there were artists doing this back in the 50s and 60s, making palimpsests. Mimo Rotello and Jacques de la Vigle were making palimpsests from the same thing. They're ripping down movie posters and sticking them straight onto the canvas, calling them art, and maybe cutting in to make them look like peeling billboards. Question, do I get in trouble? No, not yet. I don't think it's an arrestable offense, and I do wait, as I said, until they're damaged already. People do walk past and say, thanks for cleaning up New York, you know, there's more people who should be like you, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, you're right. I only got in trouble once, but, you know, anyway, I'm not going there. So I started drawing into the abstracts and making them all recognizably mine. So what I discovered as I walked through New York and opened my eyes and made myself receptive to the details around the city was that I was inspired to create art, and it's the first time in my life that I'd experienced the transformative power of art. It really did help me out of a situation. I discovered that, it was reassuring for me that this form of ancient tradition of making markings on a wall was still alive and still a part of human catharsis, especially in this age where communication is increasingly digital and introverted. From the mad scribbles of a guy on a wall in New York to a painting being put on the wall of a gallery, it's good to know that that is still a desirable human way to communicate. And if you forget everything I've said today, at least you've learned a new word, palimpsest. Thank you.